The morning sun rose over Pine Valley Ranch, and Mark believed it would be another peaceful day. Birds sang, the horses neighed softly, and the smell of hay filled the air. But peace never lasts long when Karen from the HOA is around. Mark had left the Navy 5 years ago, trading chaos for quiet. He'd bought this land with his savings. His dream was simple: rebuild his father's old barn, raise horses, and live free. But the HOA next door hated that freedom. They called his barn an eyesore. They demanded uniform paint. Mark ignored them. He wasn't part of their HOA, and he made that clear. That morning, as he walked toward his barn, his jaw locked tight. Parked directly across his barn door was a brand new white Bentley, shiny, expensive, and blocking his way completely. Karen stood beside it, arms crossed, smirking. "You can't use that barn until you repaint it," she snapped. "Consider this your lesson." Mark's eyes narrowed. "Karen, move your car." She tilted her head. "Or what? You'll file a complaint?" He smiled faintly. "No. I don't do complaints. I solve problems." He turned and walked away, calm on the surface, but a plan already forming in his mind. What Karen didn't know was that Mark always finished what others started. The following day, Mark said nothing. He didn't yell, argue, or threaten. He simply went on with his chores, pretending the blocked barn didn't exist. Neighbors watched curiously. Some whispered that Karen had finally put the ex-Navy guy in his place. Karen paraded around the neighborhood, bragging about how she'd taught him respect. Her HOA friends laughed, sipping their morning coffee as they admired her boldness. But if they knew Mark's background, they'd understand he was trained to wait, observe, and strike only once. By afternoon, Mark was quietly setting up a new ramp behind the barn. To anyone else, it looked like he was fixing the ground. But in reality, he was preparing a careful move. The Bentley still sat there, spotless, untouched. Karen made sure to mention that she'd call the police if he so much as brushed against it. That night, under the stars, Mark sat on his porch with a cup of black coffee. He wasn't angry, he was focused. His late father's words echoed in his mind: some folks need to learn respect the hard way. The next morning, when Karen strutted over again, she found Mark leaning against his tractor, humming softly. She frowned. "You're not still thinking about that barn, are you?" He looked up, smiled, and said, "No, Karen. I'm thinking about a lesson you'll never forget." By the third day, even the ranch hands could feel the tension. Karen's Bentley gleamed like a trophy in front of Mark's barn, and it drove him crazy to see her smirk every morning. But instead of confronting her, he began cleaning his tractor. The huge red machine hadn't been used in weeks until now. When Karen noticed, she laughed. "What, planning to plow your anger away?" she mocked. Mark chuckled quietly. "Something like that." Later that afternoon, he hooked the tractor to an old hay wagon. He wasn't reckless, he was strategic. He checked every lever, tightened every bolt, and marked the exact position of the Bentley. From his time in the Navy, he knew one thing: precision wins wars. The sun dipped low when Karen drove by again. "Still can't get in your barn?" she teased. Mark looked up. "Not yet. But that's about to change." Her laugh echoed across the ranch, but for the first time, Mark didn't smile back. The peace in his eyes was gone. That night, the crickets sang their song, and the wind carried the scent of rain. Mark stood beside his tractor, whispering to himself, "Tomorrow morning, Karen will regret underestimating me." And when dawn broke, the sound that shattered the valley wasn't birds, it was the roar of a tractor engine. The next morning, the ranch was alive with the growl of Mark's old John Deere. Dust rose as he slowly drove toward the barn. Neighbors peeked through curtains, even Karen's friends stood outside, phones ready to record whatever drama unfolded. Karen stepped out of her house, robe fluttering. "What do you think you're doing?" she yelled over the engine. Mark stopped the tractor a few feet from her Bentley. He turned off the engine, climbed down calmly, and said, "Moving what's in my way." Karen scoffed. "Touch that car, and I'll sue you." Mark smiled faintly. "I'm not touching it." He then gestured toward the gravel path beneath it. The ground had been subtly shifted, sloped just enough so that when he lowered the tractor's heavy front loader, It would push, not crush, the Bentley, forcing it off the barn's doorway and into the ditch beside the fence. With precision, he lowered the loader. Gravel crunched, metal groaned, and Karen screamed as her luxury car rolled helplessly into the soft ditch, mud splashing across its white paint. The crowd gasped. Mark stepped back, dusted his hands, and said quietly, "Now my barn's free." Karen, furious and speechless, pointed a trembling finger at him. "This isn't over," she shrieked. Mark just smiled. "Oh, I'm counting on that." By noon, the HOA board had assembled like a courtroom in chaos. Karen led the charge, waving photos of her muddy Bentley like crime evidence. "He attacked my property," she cried. Mark sat across from them, calm as ever. "No, I moved an obstacle from my own driveway." The HOA president tried to mediate, but Karen wouldn't stop yelling. She wanted revenge. She demanded a fine, an apology, and even suggested seizing Mark's land for community safety. But Mark knew something they didn't. Before any of this began, he had installed security cameras, high-resolution ones covering every inch of his ranch. He'd recorded every word Karen said, including her threats and trespassing, when he played the footage on his laptop. Silence filled the room. There she was, admitting she blocked his barn to teach him a lesson. Karen's face turned pale. That's taken out of context." Mark closed his laptop gently. "Context doesn't change facts." The president cleared his throat. "Karen, this appears to be a personal issue, not an HOA one." Karen stormed out, furious. Mark watched her go, knowing she wasn't done yet. But he wasn't worried. She'd already underestimated him once, and he was prepared for whatever came next. 2 days later, Karen returned, this time with 2 police officers. She waved her arms dramatically, claiming Mark had damaged her car intentionally. The officers listened quietly, then turned to Mark. "Sir, we need to hear your side." Mark nodded calmly and handed them a flash drive. "Everything's on here, timestamps, footage, even audio." The officers reviewed it right there in the cruiser. Within minutes, they returned, trying not to smile. "Ma'am," one said, "you parked illegally on private property. He warned you to move your vehicle." Karen's face fell. "You're taking his side?" "It's not about sides," the officer replied. "It's about the law." When they left, Karen stood frozen. Her pride shattered. Mark approached her quietly. "You see, Karen," he said gently, "I don't need to raise my voice to win. I just need the truth." She glared at him but said nothing. The wind carried away the last bit of her arrogance. For the first time, she looked small. Mark turned, opened his barn doors wide, and let the sunlight flood in. The silence spoke louder than words. It was the sound of peace returning home. Weeks passed, and Karen's Bentley was finally towed away for repairs. The HOA went silent, no more warnings, no more violation letters. The neighbors, once nervous, began waving at Mark again. Some even apologized for staying quiet during the chaos. One evening, as the sun set over the ranch, Mark stood outside the barn, watching the sky turn gold. His phone buzzed. It was an email from the HOA president. It read, "After reviewing all evidence, you are officially exempt from HOA jurisdiction. We appreciate your cooperation." Mark chuckled softly. Freedom had always been his goal, and now, he'd earned it again, but the story didn't end there. A week later, Karen stopped by quietly. Without her car, without her pride. "I shouldn't have done that," she admitted. "I just didn't like that you didn't follow the rules." Mark nodded. "You have your rules, Karen. I have my land." She smiled faintly and walked away, finally understanding boundaries. Mark turned back to his horses, whispering, "Some lessons take a Bentley to learn." And that was the final twist in this unbelievable HOA story. If you love the drama, don't forget to like, subscribe, and drop a comment sharing your thoughts. It really helps this channel grow.